Venezuela has become probably the cocaine capital of the world.
Venezuela is currently in deep political turmoil after years of an economic depression unparalleled in the Western world. Both a dictator and interim president are vying for power, and deep under the surface, its highest-ranking government officials, with the help of the Iran-backed militant group Hezbollah, have built a massive drug trade to enrich themselves.
Venezuela has become worse than a narco state. I consider it to be a mafia state.
Ever since Hugo Chávez came to power in 1999, Venezuela's leaders have indulged in the drug trade. What was once the richest country in Latin America has become, according to some U.S. experts, the cocaine hub of the Western Hemisphere.
The Cartel of the Suns, or Cartel de los Soles, as it's known in Latin America, is a loose federation of government officials and military officers in Venezuela, primarily from the National Guard there, that have become a criminal organization moving tons of cocaine into Europe, to the United States, and then they transited through the Caribbean and then also Central America, Mexico. The Cartel of the Suns actually originated in the early 1990s, and they started to form alliances with subversive organizations that are engaged in drug trafficking, such as the Armed Revolutionary Forces of Colombia, better known by its acronym, the FARC, and then also the ELN, the National Liberation Army. Initially, what they did is they turned a blind eye. They let these organizations run drugs through their country, but then the Venezuelans wanted to become masters of their own universe, so they started to play a more active role in not only transportation, but also in distribution. And the reason for that being is that they needed more money because of the downward spiraling economy in Venezuela.
Venezuela has become probably the cocaine capital of the world. And so anything that moves not just to the United States, to Brazil and Argentina, or to Europe, or to Africa, every major cocaine trafficking cartel in the world has had a presence in Venezuela over the last 20 to 30 years.
I would say that Venezuela was a narco state several years ago, but it has become darker and more ominous, and I consider it to be a mafia state.
Drugs are not only being pushed across landlocked borders. From at least 2007 to 2012, Venezuela's Conviasa Airlines carried drugs, cash, and people into the country by air from Iran. This flight became known as Aeroterror.
So Aeroterror was for weekly flights, and despite the fact that they were advertised, supposedly advertised commercially, you really couldn't buy a ticket on these flights if you logged on the internet with your credit card. These were flights that were designed to facilitate the transfer of cash, potentially of weapons and of drugs in both directions. Venezuela became a strategic partner of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Their hostility for the United States is really what brought them together, and within a few years, and especially during the presidency of Iran's leader Mahmoud Ahmadinejad from 2005 to 2013, this connection really flourished. It led to the establishment of direct flights for a time between Tehran and Caracas through Damascus. Now the flight ended, but now there seems to be a new opportunity to re-establish that connection, because we just heard an aircraft from Mahan Air, the Iranian private airline, recently landed in Caracas. There is little commercial value to this route. I can't imagine flocks of Iranian tourists running to Isla Margarita for a long weekend break or a winter vacation. I can imagine even less Venezuelans traveling to Tehran for similar purposes. But clearly this direct flight will facilitate certain illicit activities that the two regimes are conducting together
Venezuela is an air bridge for Iranian and Hezbollah operations all throughout the Western Hemisphere and Latin America in particular. This particularly weekly flight that started in Caracas, stopped in Damascus, and then in Tehran, and went back, lost upwards of $30 million in 3 years. Iran has used commercial flights to benefit their strategic WMD programs, including their ballistic missile program and potentially their nuclear program as well. Hugo Chávez understood that you can operationalize drug trafficking as an intelligence network to get around borders and bureaucracies. In that sense, I think Ahmadinejad, the former president of Iran, understood that concept as well, and they teamed up to use drug trafficking as a way to infiltrate societies.
At the center of aero terror and the trade route between Venezuela and the Middle East is Tarek El-Assami, the former vice president of Venezuela and current minister of industry and national production. He's been known by many names, including El Trupial, Tango Alpha, and TEA.
Tarek El-Assami. He was given executive powers over all elements of the national economy. Tarek El-Assami's family originates from Asawaita, Syria. His great uncle is a gentleman named Shibli El-Assami, who's one of the co-founders of the Ba'athist Party in Syria and the former general secretary of the Iraqi command branch of the Iraqi Ba'ath Party in Iraq. So his family has a tremendous amount of prominence with the Assad government and a tremendous amount of prominence with Arab nationalist families in the Middle East. The role of Iran and Hezbollah in Venezuela in particular, but Latin America as a whole, they have sent some very important people to Venezuela over the last 10 to 15 years, including on behalf of Iran, leaders of the Basij, which is known as a movement to repress mobilizations and student protests in Iran. And I can tell you that they're also in Venezuela to protect the Nicolás Maduro regime. Between 2007 and 2009, General Mohammad Reza Nagdi, the former commander of the Basij, was detected in Venezuela to be able to provide counterintelligence support and communications capabilities to the colectivos, which is civilian militias armed and funded by the Venezuelan government. And then Iran capitalized on this new immigration system called SAIME to be able to provide documentation to Middle Eastern operatives so that they can operate throughout Latin America. It would give them a driver's license, a property record, bank record, even a birth certificate, so that somebody from the Middle East could say they're Venezuelan, even though they never stepped foot in Venezuela and travel freely throughout other parts of the world, particularly in Europe.
So where exactly does the United States come in? Cocaine use in America has been on the rise since 2010, and Venezuela has been the Western world's #1 supplier.
Getting rid of Maduro is a distraction more than a goal. If Hezbollah were to lose Venezuela as its principal drug supplier, they have other countries that are doing similar activity, notably Bolivia and tri-border area. Well, we need to not just look at the regime and one individual, Nicolás Maduro, but we have to remember that there was a revolution that put the regime to power in the first place. Regimes can change, but revolutions remain if they're clear on their goal. Revolutions have an end state, and the Bolivarian Revolution is still active in Latin America. The Bolivarian Revolution is designed to weaken and attack sovereignty, to weaken and attack the United States, and to destabilize our regional allies.
But one question remains. What is the goal of America's Venezuela policy, given the ongoing turmoil and the vested interests of Iran and other global players?
The goal of Venezuela is not simply to change a regime. The goal is to stop a revolution.